Welcome to the Scottish Rite Journal podcast, an audio presentation of the Scottish Rite Journal, brought to you by the Supreme Council of the Scottish Rite, Southern Jurisdiction, Mother Supreme Council of the World. This week's article is Two Perspectives on the Five Jewels of the Eastern Star by John D. Bozeman, Ph.D., and Selman Karadas, Order of the Eastern Star, and comes from the July-August 2024 issue of the Scottish Rite Journal. Editor's note: founded in the 1800s, the Order of the Eastern Star, OES, has a ritual revolving around five biblical heroines: Jephthah's daughter, Ruth the Moabitess, Queen Esther, Jesus' friend Martha, and the elect lady of 2 John. Each of these women personifies a particular virtue explored in the two short pieces that follow. The first, by religious scholar John M. Bozeman, is an appreciation of the 1878 book The Five Jewels of the Orient, and it appraises a volume that maps the heroine's virtues onto stones of similar colors as those of the colored points of the Eastern Star. The second is Sister Selman Karadas' personal reflections on these virtues in her own life, with occasional references to the Five Jewels book. The Five Jewels of the Orient, a classic work of OES symbolism. John M. Bozeman, Ph.D. The House of the Temple Library contains a book of special interest to members of the Order of the Eastern Star, The Five Jewels of the Orient, by Juliet T. Burton. This book is noteworthy because it was published under the auspices of Freemasonry. Moreover, it shows how the author understood Eastern Star symbolism soon after the beginning of the OES's Third Age, an era that began in November 1876 with the consolidation of semi-autonomous OES chapters under the leadership of the General Grand Chapter of the Order of the Eastern Star. Author Juliet T. Burton understands the five biblical heroines of the Eastern Star in moral terms, expressing the hope that the true luster of our five jewels, i.e., the five OES biblical heroines, may shine into the hearts of all who love virtue, and that the sisters of the Eastern Star especially may find traits of excellence worthily depicted in their histories. She then represents the five biblical heroines as specific jewels: Jephthah's daughter, termed Ada in the Eastern Star, as turquoise, Ruth as topaz, Esther as diamond, Martha as emerald, and Electa, or the elect lady, as ruby. The colors of these gems correspond to the colors worn in the chapter by those representing these august personages. Turquoise, for instance, approximates the color of the veil worn at one point by Jephthah's daughter. In other cases, the jewels represent admirable qualities of the biblical woman. For instance, the diamond represents both the royalty and purity of character in Queen Esther. However, the book's writer is most interested in the moral qualities that each of the women embodied. She retells the story of each woman, highlighting her virtues as understood in the 1870s, while the author celebrates the moral strengths embodied by each of the five women. She has greatest praise for Martha, a woman of faith, industry, zeal, truth, and constancy, who stands prominent and fairest in the galaxy of faithful ones. The Five Jewels of the Orient does not conform neatly to a specific genre of today. It is simultaneously historical fiction, biblical exegesis, and devotional literature. As such, the book might be interpreted as a poetic charter for the newly reorganized OES. Most likely, it also embodied the hopes and fears of the American nation around the time of 1876, with a country still grieving over the devastating losses of the Civil War, even while celebrating its first centennial and hoping for a better future. Most of all, it shows how faith and virtue matter, and the ways in which both can be embodied in one's daily life. A message at least as relevant now as it was some 150 years ago when the book was written. OES Classic Literature and Applying Eastern Star Principles in Daily Life. Selman Karadas, OES. In her 1878 classic work, The Five Jewels of the Orient, Sister Juliet T. Burton describes the jewel-like virtues of the biblical woman at the 5 points of the Eastern Star. These virtues are just as applicable to our lives today as they were more than a century and a half ago. Indeed, I have learned much since I joined my Eastern Star chapter, and it has been all for the better. It has been a pathway to enlightenment, as indicated in our mission statement, to make a positive difference in the world with charitable works, lasting friendships, and loving kindness to all mankind. We can execute this mission statement by putting into action every day the principles our order embraces: charity, honesty, and loving kindness, amongst other traits. The following avenues are some of the ways in which I try to apply these particular virtues in my life. Charity. Despite our busy lives, we should seek opportunities to give back to others in meaningful ways. This year, I helped to build 2 water wells in the African nation of Ghana to provide clean water to support children and the community. Contributing to international prosperity, we aim to implement positive changes to contribute to global wellness by granting this rural community access to a nearby source of clean water. The people living in one of the towns did not have access to drinkable water and had to walk 45 minutes to obtain it. As Eastern Star members, we want to make an impact on others, as in this effort. By our example to emulate, we look to the Eastern Star figure of Electa. As we read in the 5 Jewels of the Orient, she practiced benevolence and exercised charity continuously. Honesty. Honesty and integrity not only are vital to one's professional ethics, but also are crucial in one's daily life. Jesus told us in the Gospel of John that it is truth that sets us free. True freedom comes only when truth and honesty reign. Otherwise, falsehood brings shame and disgrace to those who embrace it. We see this enacted in one of the points of the Eastern Star. For Queen Esther in the biblical book of Esther represents integrity as she saves her people from destruction. The duplicity of her nemesis Haman, on the other hand, brings out his disgrace, ruin, and death. Let us reflect on how each of us may bring Esther's example to fruition in daily life. Loving kindness. Every morning before I start my day, I begin by expressing gratitude, thus setting the tone for the day ahead. For me, loving kindness involves listening to others attentively and trying to help when and where we can, always showing kindness and compassion to those around me. Sometimes even a smile or simply asking, "How are you?" is an act of loving kindness. For our exemplary point in the Eastern Star, we look to Ruth as we read in the 5 Jewels of the Orient. The lessons that Ruth had learned in her hours of misfortune and poverty were the groundwork of deeds of charity, patient forbearance, and love. Her life she determined to make a practical fulfillment of these obligations, applied as well to the most trivial as to the greatest opportunities. I always have tried to practice such virtues as I have described in my life, but after joining the Eastern Star Sisterhood, these principles are truly embedded and applied in my everyday life. As a result of my involvement in the Eastern Star, I am committed to the ideals of charity, honesty, and loving kindness, as they serve as beacons of light that shape my actions and decisions each day. By living in alignment with these values, I aspire to make a positive impact and light up the world around me, one small act of kindness at a time. As Juliet T. Burton writes in a poem in her 5 Jewels of the Orient, may harmony bring in its circle of light all the colors that make up a halo as bright as charity, patience, long-suffering, and love can catch from reflection of jewels above, which shine through celestial gates set ajar, in blessings and peace on our beautiful star. Like and share this article, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If you wish to comment, please leave one, and as a reminder, hit the notifications bell. Any accompanying photographs or citations for this article can be found in the corresponding print edition. The Scottish Rite Journal is published by the Supreme Council of the Scottish Rite, Southern Jurisdiction, Mother Supreme Council of the World. Mark Dreisenstock, 33rd degree, Managing Editor. I'm your host, Matt Bowers.